Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of 5 Elements of Success Player Development Series. I'm Roger Nick, your host, and also founder of the Junior Golf Hub. We're really excited to bring to you this week, equipment. Check in with your equipment, and also talking about some of the new equipment coming out. But before we get to the show, I want to say today is Women's Golf Day. We're celebrating all women and girls in golf. So we're wearing red. Hopefully you are out there as well. So again, celebrating Women's Golf Day. So thanks so much for participating. As we get started in the show, as always, we want to make sure that we're interactive with the show. 5 Elements at the Golf Performance Center. Please send your questions, your comments, your concerns. We want to hear from you so we can help you be your best self out there on the golf course and in life. So again, thanks so much for watching and tuning in. I've got Tyler Campbell here, Director of Performance, co-host Dennis Hillman, also Director of Coaching. So always welcome to be here with you guys. So hopefully you're tuning in and seeing what we have for you out there, okay? Pop quiz this week. What tool do I use at home to measure my lie angles for my clubs? Let me repeat that. What tool at home can I use to measure my lie angles of my clubs? So if you don't have a loft and lie machine, you can use something at home to actually get that. So some of you mathematicians may be able to get that. I'd struggle with that, but maybe you would get it. But anyway, we got that's our pop quiz. So we're going to be giving away this beautiful tailor-made head cover that's one of a kind. So make sure you get those answers in. We're going to draw that out, draw the winner out of the hat later in the show. So make sure you get those answers in as soon as possible. Again, we want to see you win that. So think about it. Yeah. Tyler, we had last week, we were at Crystal Springs.
It was a
really
great show, yeah.
Experience for the show, so give us a recap.
Yeah, absolutely. So guys, last week, as Roger mentioned, we were on location at Crystal Springs Resort on a little work retreat, trying to get better for all of you guys out there. We had a great time, played some golf, and got some good stuff done. But our show covered how to hit pressure shots, or how to hit shots under pressure. Mm-hmm. So we had a few of our juniors on the show, Jake Sullivan, Jake Portugal, and Jonathan Oakes were kind enough to kind of walk us through their strategies and how to manage that. I know Dr. Josh Brandt was on the show as well, talked to us, about some different strategies with regards to our breathing techniques and how we can better, manage our stress. We talked about how important the dynamic warm-up was, and then also having a go-to shot under pressure. So again, those are all available on juniorgolfhub.com/5elements. Also available on the Golf Performance Center's YouTube page. So check out any previous episodes right there.
Awesome. Great recap, Tyler. This week, again, we're going to be talking about equipment. Why I have this in my hand is that, does it fit me still? I've used this club most of the summer. It may have changed. I like to practice with it. So I want to make sure that Nick Novak, our Director of Custom Clubs, is going to be out helping us understand, has this changed for me? Is it still the right fit for me? Also going over some new equipment that's coming out this fall. So again, stay tuned. We've got a great show for you. But Dennis, this time of year, we're talking with our juniors, and obviously we go through our 4 assessments of the year. One of the big things is talking about the equipment, as it is one of our 5 elements. What's some of the advice that you'd give to the audience today?
Yeah, so we've had a busy summer with our juniors. We know a lot of juniors are out playing golf, so I think we're all lucky to be doing that. And a lot of fall tournaments coming up, so the season's not over. So if you're getting ready for some of those majors like the Nota Begay Series or Hurricane Tour Championship, there's a lot of golf left, hopefully, but if you haven't had your clubs checked in a while, number one, they may have changed. So, lofts and lies can change as you practice and play and as you move those clubs around and throw them in the trunk. Another thing is you may have grown, right? We know that adolescents grow a lot in the summer with that sunlight and the vitamin D, so your body could be different, moving different, and swinging differently at different speeds. And last but not least is the set makeup. You may have noticed a couple things, decisions you made on the golf course. Maybe avoided certain clubs in certain situations. So you really want to make sure you take a good look and make sure you have the right 14 clubs in your set.
Oh, that's great advice. And one of the things I know you talked about, we were talking about yesterday, just a rehearsal of the show, you were talking about Bobby Jones and how he struggled with one of his clubs, or there's a story out there that he struggled with one of his clubs. Why don't you share that story with us?
Yeah, so Bobby Jones, for those of you who don't know, was the best player of his generation. He never turned pro. He was an amateur, lifelong amateur in the teens and 20s. He actually won the old version of the Grand Slam in the 20s. But they didn't have all the equipment, meaning lofts and lies machines and things that Nick may talk about here in a bit. But they actually tested his equipment years after his prime when they had some better technology to see what actually his set makeup looked like, and each club individually, the club specs of them. And what they found was that his 8-iron just didn't really match as far as, I think length, weight, flex of the shaft. It really stood out as being a lot different than the rest of the set. And Bobby Jones said he recollected back and said, you know what, yeah, I really always struggled with my 8-iron. It always felt different to me.
Yeah,
so it was interesting.
Yeah, I think that's a great story, and I think we've all felt that. We all probably have and you probably have a favorite club out there that you're hitting a lot on the range, or maybe it's your go-to, or maybe it's your 3-wood, I don't know, 6-iron. I know mine is my 7-iron, so I want to make sure that's always in good shape, and that's what we're going to be checking here shortly, Nick, is, again, welcome to Nick Novak, Director of Custom Clubs. But we're going to be checking this 7-iron and making sure the lofts haven't changed or the lie hasn't changed, because I know my swing hasn't changed, but something's going on, and I'm not hitting the ball where I think I should be hitting it when I'm using this club. So can you give us some insight of what might be happening there?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the benefits of doing these quarterly analysis with the kids and gapping is that you can see when the club moves. You can see sometimes if you practice a lot off of a mat, a lot of these mats have cement underneath, and if that's your primary area that you practice, sometimes the lie angle will change 1 or 2 degrees upright. The loft can change depending on the golf ball that you're hitting a lot, and so when we check quarterly, we can look back at what the lofts were 4 months ago and the lie angles were 4 months ago, and then you can look, and sure enough, sometimes the club that you use the most, maybe a 7-iron or 8-iron to practice with, may have some movement in it.
Yeah, and kind of going back to what Dennis was talking about with Bobby Jones is, most people do have a protractor at home to maybe check their loft and lies with. I would probably imagine that's what Bobby Jones was doing 100 years ago, but maybe not now. And you've got some pretty cool equipment that you can check these things with. And so give us a little bit about why that's so important to check that, and how accurate is it when you actually go through this process?
Yeah, we're looking down to a degree, so it's very accurate, and a degree is a very small amount with a big impact. And so sometimes 1 or 2 degree movement of lie angle on a 150-yard shot can be about 9 yards of dispersion. And so that's the difference between hitting a green or missing a green, or maybe on land or in water. And so when you're practicing really hard, you want to make sure that your equipment is doing what it's supposed to do.
Right. That's probably what's wrong with this baby right here. It might be just a little off. So
yeah, you practice a lot.
Yeah, so I want to make sure I'm missing too many greens right now. So, So as we're talking about that, and one of the things that I know you guys do here, you use Gears technology, Gears for Golf technology, because we know it's the most accurate out there when it comes to measuring what's going on with the shafts and how the head's being affected and where the ball is coming off. I mean, within a millimeter, I think that would probably work with most people, right? So tell us a little bit about how you're using that technology and why that's important to you as a fitter and a coach.
Sure. So, we run every person that comes to Custom Clubs for a fitting experience through the Gears 3D motion capture system, and we measure the way the shaft loads and unloads throughout the swing. And, it's given us great insight as to, what factors determine the loft and lie and the launch of the ball. I mean, every club fitter usually looks at the ball numbers and characteristics, but there's a lot of lead factors, and that could be like a bit of a lad factor. So we try to look at the lead factors. What's causing this stuff? What's causing the toe to dig?
Right.
Sometimes it's a too flat of a lie angle. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes the shaft is bending in a way too much or too little and is affecting performance. So we're lucky to have that 3D motion capture system so we can measure, and it's a big part of what we do here.
Yeah, and I think what's so important, as you talked about, is those lead factors. And I know with Tyler Campbell, after we go through, kind of the line and how to check those, we're going to come back and we're going to talk about those Gears captures that you've done and how that relates to the body and how the club, again, Gears is one of the only technology out there, body, club, and ball. I mean, it doesn't get much better than that when you're trying to help someone improve. And I know, Dennis, it's been so, that's a large part of what we do in understanding where players are, at developmentally.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can start with, just looking at the dynamics of impact like they will and how the club is acting, but we know that how the body moves is really, dictating how the club acts and obviously the club itself. So we want to, always kind of take it from impact all the way back to, function dictates form and swing tendencies, and so there's a lot of factors at play, and we want to ideally being able to see them all at the same time on Gears is really beneficial.
Yeah. So all right, without going any further on more detail of the lead factors, I've got a bum 7-iron here. I'm a little bummed out. I'm missing more greens with it, so I want to check this. So can we go in and show everyone how to check loft and lies on this club?
Absolutely.
All right, awesome.
I get it.
I'll follow you, Nick.
Okay.
but it's a pretty easy process. I think if you have the right equipment, you know, probably a little different if you had a protractor, but now that you have this great Mitchell machine, loft and line machine, I think it's pretty easy and simple for most players to do this.
Absolutely.
Or at least go back to, you know, to a center that has one.
Yeah, the Mitchell loft line machine has been a staple in the golf build rooms and golf equipment for a long time, and they've been doing the golf specific equipment for a long time. So we set the club in here and we make sure the scoring lines are straight. We're going to clamp it down, and then we're going to measure the loft. That's 35 degrees of loft on the 7-iron, and the lie angle. I guessed 61.5 earlier, and it's 61.5.
All right.
So,
all right.
And
Now,
that's how
what
we
is
measure.
that? So, what does that mean? So, you've got the loft there. You know, you've got certain players, and you know they want to hit the ball a little bit further.
Yeah.
And so, we're really trying to figure out why that's important to some players. That lofts are kind of a little off, right?
Yeah,
You know, so-
absolutely. And you know, like I said before, the fact that we measure them throughout the year. So if they're playing really well at a certain time of the year, we want to know what their clubs are like during that time, like
Right.
when they're playing their best. And so sometimes when we go back and look, when they're not playing as well, the lofts have moved or the lie angles have moved, and you know that's normal wear and tear on clubs. The kids are traveling, and
Right.
you know, so that's why we try to do the quarterly analysis.
Right. So that's really important. So what you just told me was it wasn't my equipment, so maybe it's me.
Could be.
So you know, I don't want to be PC or out of PC, so I'll just say it's me, right? So it's definitely the arrow there, right? You know, or not the arrow. So, but anyway, it's the archer, that's for sure. So I have to look at that and say, okay, well, if that's the case, you know, Tyler's my coach, he's my physical guy. I know I've got some physical limitations, and you know, so is that something that you would recommend also to a player? Would you go, hey, listen, equipment looks really good, you know, maybe we're trying to lay blame on something that's not there, you know, so.
Yeah, similar to seeing that something may have moved, sometimes you can see that nothing has moved. And so you can say that maybe a certain ball flight that they had early in the year, they're using the same club and they're not getting that ball flight anymore, or they're not getting that carry distance anymore. And so if the club is measuring the same as it did 6 months ago, then something else is affecting the ball flight.
And too often, I mean, obviously we're in long-term athletic development. You know, I mean, that's what we do on a daily basis. And so we see these junior athletes growing oftentimes at a very rapid pace. And so, you know, I always like to explain it again, when we're in the gym setting, and I'm trying to talk equipment, you know, with some of the junior athletes, I'll say, hey, you know, we all have the goal of getting the ball to go in a desirable direction. So if your equipment isn't properly fit for you, you're going to move a certain way to try to get it to go where you want it to go. It's that simple. So, you know, if the club is too long or too heavy, which oftentimes we see with maybe some, you know, overzealous parents, to be totally honest, you know, let's gain an extra 5 yards with buying a long driver. That's gonna hinder and really be a detriment to the athlete's long-term development in their ability to create speed. So, you know, throughout growth spurts, that's when that window of opportunity we've talked about in previous episodes about making these athletes fast, making them explosive. That's the time to take advantage of it. So, likewise, once an athlete grows, understanding that, hey, maybe this equipment is too light now. Maybe the flex isn't appropriate. You know, you use the verbiage a few weeks ago. Man, this shaft is holding on for dear life. You know what I mean? Which is a good thing. That means we're getting stronger as athletes. That means we're, you know, getting faster. But if we're not recognizing that, we're going to be moving a certain way to keep that ball in front of us. So.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point, Tyler. And I think I'd also say, you know, as a parent and junior golfer, you know, have junior golfers in the household. I mean, one of the things we also look at is, well, I don't want to buy a set of clubs or a club that they're going to outgrow in 6 months, right? It's like, you know, how many pairs of shoes can you buy for a kid, right? I mean, it's like they'll throw them in a heartbeat.
Yep.
You don't know that yet, but you will someday soon. But anyway, that's one of the things that I think is also a concern, because it's an expensive sport.
Yeah, and a junior is not really going to tell you if the club is not working. If they're pumped up to get a new club, they've been looking at the commercials all summer, and they finally get this new driver, a new wedge, and it's going crooked. They're going to really, you know, to Tyler's point, is they're going to find a solution to that problem, and it's going to be at the expense a lot of times of their golf swing and their technique.
And to your point, Roger, you know, I think what Nick and Gabe here do such a great job of is making sure that the clubs grow with the juniors, so you can get fit properly, and they can make tweaks along the way, whether it's an extension or a new shaft. You don't have to get a new set of clubs every 3 to 6 months when you grow. you can just kind of make it grow with you, and you guys do a great job of that.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's really good. Well, we know it's not the equipment, it's me, and so I'm not getting new equipment, but I might have options out there with some of the new equipment that's coming out this fall.
The fall is a very busy time in the golf equipment timeline for the year for releases, and so some big manufacturers are going to drop some new product this fall, and one of them already has. TaylorMade has launched some new irons, and there's some new stuff out there. So these have been pretty exciting. These are the P770s, and one thing that's new about this is TaylorMade is using a 2,000-ton compact forging process to make sure that the grain is evenly spread across the metal. So that process used to take a lot longer by heating the metal up and cooling it down, and heating it up and cooling it down to spread out the molecules, and they found a way to do it in a little bit more efficient way with the 2,000-pound forging compact.
Well, you just went way over my head on that, but I can tell you that what does that mean to a junior golfer or a parent out there that's trying to look at these or buy these?
So it means that the metal is a little bit more stable across the face, that there's no hot spots on the face where it could be a little hotter because the molecules are more dense. Everything is spread across evenly, so you see a little bit more consistency and across the metal.
Yeah, so, and again, I know, Dennis, us growing up, and you guys are a little younger than we are, but I mean, that was a problem years ago where you'd get a set of clubs and all of a sudden you get a hot spot on an iron, you're hitting it 30 yards further. Yeah, that's a surprise.
Yeah, definitely having that dispersion, just not even directionally, just distance control. That's really the big challenge out there. What tour players spend so much time on, and they're so good at, is controlling distance with irons. And if you have that hot spot and you add a flyer lying there, I mean, that thing, you don't know when it's coming down. So that's important. That was very interesting.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting. It reminds me of an old technology or technology that's still out there. Mizuno, I think, has a flow forge.
Grain flow forge, and that's what they do. They heat it up and cool it down.
Yeah, which is pretty amazing. And so it sounds like technology is still keeping up with each other and different equipment manufacturers. So
absolutely.
That's great. So with that being said, we go through a fitting process, and I know you have some video of gears and one of our players. So I know, Tyler, you have some input as far as what's happening on the physical side, what you're doing and what you're seeing with the shaft and its deflection and its droop, how that's happening, and then obviously as a coach, what you're seeing and identifying and how to help the player. So I think if you could just run us through that video.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I think when we're looking at a common swing tendency that we see called early extension, all right, early extension is when the hips are going to basically go into extension before they should in the golf swing. We know hip extension is a very powerful motion and generates a lot of power for us, but physical, I guess, inefficiencies will creep in and force those hips to extend a little too soon. So, Jay Milch was a junior athlete with us at the age of 15. He's now a collegiate athlete with us and was on a few episodes ago for our putting drills episode. But he's had a tendency in his development at times to early extend to be a power source. So in that particular golf swing, you're going to see the inability of his hips to rotate at the appropriate times. And as a result, his hips are going to move into extension. Now, what does this mean for the equipment side of things? Nick, when we see an athlete go into early extension, what typically happens with the club? What dynamics at the club take place?
Before you go there, Nick, I just want to just preface one thing. Now, Jay Milch is a smaller athlete. I mean, he's 5'9", 5'10" at the most, and probably about 155 pounds. Right. Generated a lot of speed for his size, which I think what you're saying is that early extension helped create a lot of that power for him.
Well, essentially, right. Yeah, the early extension was a result of not being able to control the different segments of his body. Right. And so, to summarize that, basically, junior athletes don't have this stability or control, for that weighted implement that's out, far away from their body. And so, as a result, they, again, back to we're going to do what we have to do to get the ball to go in a desirable direction. Jay's move was to move a little bit towards the golf ball. So
and he can hit at 300 bills every once in a while.
I know. Now to give you an update, he's gotten much stronger, right? And his move has changed as well. So as a result, his equipment will probably change.
Yeah, generally when you see that thrust towards the ball in the downswing, the shaft will start to stand up more in this direction, and the toe will be down a little bit in general. It's not always the case, but and that happens. And so most club fitters may say, oh, we're going to bend the club more upright, 2 degrees. I know some fitting systems go all the way to 4 degrees upright. And maybe that's the right fit for someone who's not going to change their swing, right? Someone who's just, that's their swing and they're owning it. But, for maybe a junior who you are working on their patterns and their tendencies, you may not want to go all 4 degrees upright. Maybe you want to look at the way they're moving their body and change that as a result, instead of just going for the all-in club fix.
You may just keep the lie angle, because that may encourage the right kind of movement as they early extend, as you said, and raise the handle and need more upright clubs. If you keep it flatter and they work on the right kind of hip movement or pelvic movement in the golf swing and get away from early extension, the equipment staying there or flatter may actually help.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it looked like from the video or the Gears technology day, it looked like he would flatten out and get to 0 at impact pretty well.
Yeah.
So even though there's some things going on or going off, if you would, he still managed to get the club, or a good fit, as you may have done. Ended up getting the club where it needed to be based on what he's doing at that moment.
Right. So that club that he was on Gears had a very good lie angle at impact.
The thing that I found fascinating about Gears when we first got it and hooked those clubs up was just how accurate it was, and the fact that it showed the deflection and the droop of the shaft and the different tendencies and what the club head's doing at different points. Really, like you said, down to a millimeter of accuracy, and that you're not going to get that on camera. You're not going to get that even to the naked eye. So having the ability to really isolate it, break it down on this, high-end technology is great.
Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely science-grade technology. I mean, one of the things out there, I know it's not available to everybody, but there are other technologies out there. Hopefully, some of your coaches have, maybe K-Vest or K-Trainer, that you can get some of that input from and get out there and get tested and see if you get close to what you need to get for you out there. And I know that's something that's really important, for you, is getting that right equipment in the hands, because I know it's going to make a difference for the player.
Yeah, we're not scared to make a change anytime, really, if we think it's going to give the player the best chance to shoot a low score. So that's one thing that we are steadfast in, is that we want the best right away. We don't want to wait for anything. We're trying to shoot
Very common question we get from juniors and parents is, I just got fit for clubs. They said I should be playing these. Should I use them right away, or should I stick with my old clubs? And to your point, I mean, why wait, right? These clubs fit you better for where you are right now. Just put them right in the bag and play in a tournament the next day. I mean, no reason to wait, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And we're seeing a lot of the juniors finding some success with some new equipment in the bag. So it's been cool to see that. These juniors, we've had some wins in some top 10s and top 5s, and they've had some new shafts in their irons and new drivers and new putters. So it's been cool to see.
Yeah, that's really good. And it's really cool to see, as you're working with them over time. And obviously, Tyler, on the physical side, it's such a fun thing to watch how it all comes together.
Sure.
And I think that's something that is missed out there for a lot of players, because they don't have a facility like the Golf Performance Center. Well, good for us, right? And good for our players. So it's really kind of cool to see that they can actually get that equipment all through their development. As Dennis was saying, like, we can kind of continue to grow with them as they grow or they get stronger, which is really important. So I don't know if we have anything else, Dennis, on your advice as far as the equipment is concerned, for the players and parents out there. Where would you go with it now?
Yeah, I think, number one, just go get a checkup with somebody, even if it's just a gapping. Get on the simulator and find out where your distances are, and if there are any issues that arise. For the most part, I'd say probably 95% of the time you're going to find something, at least with one club, or a gapping issue, or some kind of performance issue with a particular part of the club or part of the set makeup. So, start right there. And then, like we said, just if you get something new, put it in play right away, and you'll start to get better and better with it. So.
Yeah, that's some great advice. Hopefully you listen out there and go get some advice and get those things checked. But Nick, what would be your last advice here to the audience?
Yeah, I would second Dennis is go out there and get gapped. And, it's never a bad time. It doesn't matter if you're playing well or not playing well. We had a really good professional golfer in here earlier today, and he's got some big tournaments coming up. He had a tournament last week, and we're gapping him, and we're doing it right now, and we're getting some new gapping in the wedges. And sometimes that's the best time, because you're in the heat of battle, and that feedback you get is stronger than any feedback you can get in practice. And so, sometimes stuff that you practice with is good, and you go out on the course, and you may not want to pull the trigger on the club the same. Maybe there's a little scar tissue with a 6-iron, and you go with the 7, and it costs you. Or you lay up to a yardage that you don't lay up to the right yardage because you don't want to hit that wedge anymore. And so, you know, right now is the time. There's no better time than the present.
Yeah, and I think I overheard you guys talking about it. He had a 20-yard gap between his wedges, and that's pretty significant. And I would dare, you know, I bet most of you guys out there probably have big gaps that you don't know of. So again, good time to get it done. Still plenty of golf left in the fall. You know, making sure that you have the right equipment in your bag, get the job done, right? I mean, that's what we're trying to do. Tyler, on the physical side, any last words of wisdom here, if you would, before we get into questions?
I think we're just going to reiterate, function dictates form, right? So overall, how your body's moving is going to dictate how you move the club and the characteristics of the club that you're ultimately going to have in your hands. So patience throughout your development, doing the right things at the right times, taking advantage of your speed windows, and staying in touch with your club fitter.
All right, that's great. Great advice. And again, a lot of golf left out there. And again, unprecedented due to COVID-19. You know, we've got a lot of majors coming up this fall. I'm sure in the juniors, as Dennis has said, we've got a lot of majors. Nota Begay National Championship, Hurricane National Championship, and many HAGA events out there still to play. So make sure you got those that equipment dialed in for your best golf coming up in the near future. Andrew, we have some questions.
Yeah, we have a couple good questions from the audience today. The first is, you've talked about club fitting really for irons. What about putting fitters? What's the process there? What questions and answers should I be looking for, especially for a junior?
Oh, great. That's a great question. Nick, what do you got for putter fitting?
Yeah, so our putter fitting process is we take a look at the posture and we line up certain key posture components, and we check a baseline with their original putter, and we basically want to see how the length of the putter is affecting the way they're setting up. And putter length, as you change putter length, can really affect the posture of a player. And so, you know, we'll experiment with some different lengths on putters, and we'll take a video to check their posture, and we just monitor that and how it works. And you know, it's not a one-size-fits-all thing. You know, some people do a little better with their eyes inside the ball. Sometimes they do a little better with their eyes right over the ball. But we're just looking for the most effective stroke. And so we use Sam Putt Lab to measure, so very similar to Gears. It's a 3D motion capture system, and it measures where they're hitting the ball and on the club face and their club path and their arc and their face to the path during the swing. So we get a lot of information, and that's generally our putter fitting process. And once we nail it down to the right length, the right head shape, and the right lie angle, we'll do green grass verification outside. So we had them on a real grass, putting to a real hole outside, and that's kind of like the last step.
Oh, that's great. And putters are important. I mean, you got to get the ball in a hole, right? And that's usually the typically club you use most is that putter. So make sure you get a good fitting there as well.
The next question is, can you demonstrate what you mean by hip extension and being early?
Yes.
Oh, great.
So essentially, if we're in a good setup posture, so I'll turn to the side here. If I'm in a good setup posture, good hip hinge position, you know, there's two types of posture that we refer to: static and dynamic. Static would be just be setting up to your address position. Dynamic essentially is as soon as that club starts to move through the end of your golf swing. So hip extension from just a standing posture is this motion right here. So my hip is here in flexion. Okay, so from my femur to my torso, my hip is in flexion, and now it is going into extension. All right, so as I go through my mechanics of my golf swing, if I were to go into early extension too soon, again, to exaggerate that a little bit, I'm a natural, trust me, you know, you're going to get those hips going towards the golf ball. And you know, from an efficiency standpoint, that changes the. What are you laughing at, Dennis? That changes the position of the club head relative to the golf ball too. So definitely not an efficient motion from an energy transfer standpoint, and one that we want to try to improve with our function and our corrective exercise.
Yeah, I think that's a good explanation. One of the other things out there is that don't think that extension is bad. It's not just bad because it's important. Again, one of the big, as you said earlier, the power source really, the glutes in the golf swing. You squeeze or contract, you're going to have extension.
Well,
so
100%.
It's not all bad. It's just when is it happening in the golf swing? Does it happen in the backswing, downswing, or right at impact? So there's a reason you want to know when and why it's happening.
Again, that swing tendency is called early extension, not just extension.
Right.
So.
Exactly.
The next question is, when do you suggest switching to a stiffer shaft for a junior? Many at a young age are moving to them now, which we do not agree with. What are your thoughts?
Good question.
Yeah,
Control.
it's going to be a lot of monitoring by the coaching and the club fitters to make sure that there's charts you can look at that kind of tell you what club speed you should get and what flex of the shaft you should get. Part of that formula is also the weight of the shaft. So you can have a very lightweight stiff, and that can work for a lot of players, and you can have a heavy regular that does not work for that player. So, it's one of these one size does not fit all. It's a combination of weight and flex, and those two come together, and the golfer can find success if you find the right stiffness and the right weight.
Yeah, and a lot of that has to do with transition. I know, Dennis, you talk a lot about that as far as, in transition and how you load the shaft and when that's loaded. And some juniors are quick loaders and some are, slow, and it's okay. There's not a right or wrong. It's just what it is.
It's not exactly just as simple as clubhead speed. As your clubhead speed goes up, right, the shaft gets stiffer. I mean, it's how you load and unload the shaft. That's where, obviously we measure that on gears with deflection and droop. So, you could have two people at the same clubhead speed with totally different flex in their shaft, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What's the appropriate distance between wedges?
Oh, another good one. So you just went through a gapping with a very good player. What are you seeing, and what do you think would be a good gapping?
The wedge gapping a lot of times is like second to the long game gapping. So you're kind of at the mercy of how many clubs you have in the bag. So if you're heavily stacked on the top of your bag with long clubs and fairway woods and hybrids and maybe a utility iron, you might only have 2 wedges at the bottom, a finesse wedge like a 56 or 58, and then a sand wedge. And so if you have a pitching wedge and then you have a finesse wedge of 56, the gap between those 2 wedges you're going to want to fill effectively. And so generally, you can look at the lofts and find out, hey, you have 10 degrees difference, so if you put a wedge 5 degrees between either one, that's going to be your loft. But that might not be always the case. Sometimes a player wants a certain number, and sometimes you need to change the loft to get that number. So for instance, the wedge gapping today, we went with a 49-degree gap wedge because that gave him the exact number versus the 50 that's written on it. And it wasn't, in theory, the 50 should have been the right number, but when we made it 49, it hit his number exactly. So that's what we did there. And so on paper, it might look like there's a bit of a gap there, but in actuality, what the ball's doing, it's gapped perfectly.
Yeah, great. Good questions.
Last question is, how do I know when to check my clubs?
Another good one. And I think that'll be to you guys, right?
Yeah, I think if you have a coach, they should help you identify it. I think it's really just paying attention. If you have a good process of analyzing your performance after tournament rounds and looking at stats and just trying to identify strengths and weaknesses and really tendencies, I missed 10 fairways to the left, and maybe some of that's equipment. So again, a lot of variables involved, but if you're consistent at analyzing what you're doing in competition, these things should reveal themselves.
All right, so we got a pop quiz winner.
We do have a winner today, and the winner today is Michael Ryan.
Michael Ryan, all right, congratulations,
Congrats.
Michael Ryan. You're going to win this beautiful head cover by TaylorMade, one of a kind, so you're going to love that. So thanks so much for participating to everyone as well.
The answer to the pop quiz question, Roger, was the protractor.
Oh, yeah, the answer to the pop quiz is the protractor. That's right. We said it a few times, so hopefully you got that, and Michael got it, so congratulations to Michael on that. So that was awesome. How many guys did actually get that? Oh, yeah? Wow, that's a really hard one, so that was really good. So, Ryan, you did some homework, I'm sure, so good job. All right, so next week, back to school, time management for the student athlete. We know it's a big one. We got a lot of kids going back to school over the next few weeks, and I know it's a little different, and the landscape is quite a bit different again that's out there. So we're going to have to learn how to manage our time a little differently, and hopefully you get a little bit more time with maybe some of the kids that are not in the traditional school or maybe schools at home, those kind of things. So learning how to manage that time as well is going to help you perform better on the golf course. We're going to be talking about that quite a bit next week. So, hopefully we'll see you next week. Again, as always, thanks to the sponsors, Ethan Allen Preparatory, Achieving Your Greatness in the Classroom, on the golf course, and in life, and Junior Golf Hub, making sure that you have that app. Download the app. If you haven't done that, download the app. Get those coaches in your pocket. Search those schools that you're looking for and find the best fit for you. Again, hopefully helping you achieve your greatness in life, in the classroom, and on the golf course as well. So make sure you get that app. Also, we want to make just a reminder that we have Next week, oh, I already said that. I'm sorry. I already said that. So next week we're talking about time management. So I apologize. And again, let's make sure that you enjoy your journey out there. We're enjoying our journey in here, and let's get after it.